absolutely needed. All right, if you got your Bibles with you, turn over to Revelation chapter 13. Revelation chapter 13. And I will catch up with y'all there in just a minute. Excuse me. All right, we're going to continue our study in the book of Revelation. Now, if you remember last time, we covered Revelation chapter 12 in its entirety. And when we looked at that, we realized that it's almost as if Revelation chapter 12 is kind of a new starting point in the book of Revelation. And Revelations chapters 1 through 11 kind of go together, whereas chapters 12 through 22 go together. And it's almost like it's a new rolling vision that John is given here. And if you remember last week in chapter 12, well, 2 weeks ago, I guess. 2 weeks ago in chapter 12, when we covered that, it was a story. And the story was a simple one. The interpretation might be a little bit convoluted, but the story is a simple one. There was a woman who was giving birth to a child, a son, a male son, who's described as the ruler of the earth, who was caught up to God. Well, that's pretty easy who that is. That was the Son of God. That was Jesus Christ. Now, it says of the woman that she was persecuted by the dragon, and that she went off into the wilderness, and the dragon tried to further persecute her. When the dragon realized that he could not overcome the woman, he turned to her other offspring. Generally speaking, the woman represents the church, or more than likely represents the church, and the other offspring are the Christians of the church. Man.
Justin.
Excuse me just a minute. I got cough drops right here. Somebody hooked me up with cough drops before I begin my class tonight. And I'm going to need them. I'm about to have a coughing fit. Hang on. My wife says my cough sounds like a horse cough, too. You can hear it, can't you? It does. It sounds like a horse cough. All right.
I got medicine for that.
There you go. Charles, I could use that.
Ivermectin or whatever that is.
Yeah, I could probably use a little bit of it. Man, that cough drop is saving my life right now, John. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. All right. Revelation chapter 13 tonight is what we're going to be covering. Now, if you remembered, last time we concluded with the dragon not able to, and again, we really focused in on the point of chapter 12. No matter what the interpretation is, the point of it is the devil lost in heaven. The devil failed to stop the child from being born. The devil failed to persecute the woman. The devil failed to destroy the woman. And the devil is going to fail persecuting her other children. Okay? That's the point of Revelation chapter 12. Now, if you remember, we ended last week with the dragon turning to now go and persecute the other offspring. And look at verse 1 there. And Sylvia pointed this out last week, because that is the last verse in chapter 12 for some people. But the devil, the dragon, stood on the sand of the seashore. And from here, what he's going to do is he's going to call out a great sea beast. And so let's get into that tonight.
Yeah.
Maybe. Man, all kinds of trouble.
Clicker's not working over here.
I see
Huh?
it's working right here. Clicker's working great. That's not working. All right, hang on. All right. Bear with me.
You want my hammer?
Hmm? Oh, I could use your hammer. I can promise you that. Technology. It's just it's a blessing. And then, yeah, it is. Sometimes it is an absolute curse. When it's working right, boy, it's just smooth as silk. It's just great. Come on. You can do it. It's gonna work, I promise you. TJ, where's your dad when we need him?
Out there in the truck.
Yes. I know, Casey's working tonight. Hang on. This is really important that we have this. What's going on? Well, folks, we might be without a PowerPoint tonight. Man. I might have to get the chalkboard out. It's going to be really hard to do without visuals. Hang on. Let's try this.
I need you to get that.
Oh, I need you to like sit down.
Reboot.
Okay, we're going to turn it off and turn it back on.
Oh, that's Phil.
Isn't that the way that always works? It's amazing how you can do that and it's just all of a sudden it's working.
That may be a prayer we need to add at the beginning.
Pray for technology? Yeah, we could. We might have to do that. Oh, did I lose internet?
Or maybe it's a lesson.
Oh, no, I got internet right there. There we go. Yeah, it might be an omen.
Did you go get that?
From Sunday to the 2.
All right, folks. We're moving on without. We're moving on without a PowerPoint presentation. I apologize greatly. That is the first time that has ever happened to us. All right. Don't need that. Let's look at Revelation chapter 13. And let's start with you, Farrell. I like starting with you. Let's read chapter 13, verse 1 and 2. And then what we'll do, we'll just do this the old-fashioned way. We'll walk back through the text and just try to figure if we can break this down, okay? Revelation 13, Farrell, will you read verse 1 and 2 for me, please, sir?
And the dragon stood on the sand at the seashore. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns, 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on the heads were a blasphemous name.
All right, so we introduced to a beast. What is the beast referred to as? Do what? A dragon, but the dragon does what? What is it? The dragon stands on the seashore and he calls this great beast up, right? And so it's described as a beast, but it's described as a sea beast, okay? So the beast comes up out of the sea. Now that's important to remember because John is quoting from a section of text, and we'll get to what section of text here in a little bit, but he's quoting from a section of text where a beast also comes up out of the sea, okay? Now he describes this beast in a few ways. Let's look at how he describes him. Look there in verse 1. It says, he has 10 horns, 7 heads. On his horns were 10 diadems. Does anybody have another word for diadem? Crowns. Okay. So crowns, that crown is a different word from the crowns of victory that are described as the saints receiving. Be faithful unto death and you will receive a crown of life. Revelation chapter 2 and verse 10. That is a different Greek word for this Greek word. This crown is not a crown of victory like the saints receive. It's a crown of a ruler. Okay? Now, not a ruler of rulers or king of kings as Jesus would have, but a ruler as you would think of like a prince of this world, a ruler of this world. Now it says there, on his heads were what? There at the last part of verse 1.
Blasphemous names.
Blasphemous names. Okay? Pharaoh, go ahead and read verse 2, and then let's see if we can figure out who this sea beast is. Go ahead and read verse 2.
And the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, his mouth was like the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave his power and his throne and and great authority.
All right, so according to the last part of that verse, it was the dragon that gave him power, throne, and authority, right? Okay, so he gets his power from the dragon, okay? So is the beast the same thing as the dragon? No, he gets his power from the dragon. He gets his authority from the dragon. Well, the dragon's an easy one. You back up to chapter 12. About halfway down in chapter 12, it says that the dragon is Satan. That's an easy one. But we need to figure out who the sea beast is. Well, according to verse 1, he tells us he's got 10 horns, 7 heads, 10 crowns on his horns, blasphemous names. And then in verse 2, he described him as being like 3 different animals. What are those 3 different animals that you see?
Leopard, a bear.
Do what?
A leopard.
A leopard?
A bear.
A bear? And a lion.
Lion.
A leopard, a bear, and a lion. Okay, so let's see if we can identify this beast that has 7 heads, 10 horns, crowns of ruler on his horns, blasphemous names. He looks like a lion, a bear, and a leopard. Okay? Let's see if we can identify him. Now in Revelation chapter 17 and verse 12, that the same beast is also described there. And you can go, you can flip over to Revelation 17 if you'd like to, beginning there in verses 9, 10, down through 12. There is a woman who is seen sitting on a scarlet beast in that chapter. And the woman who's sitting on a scarlet beast, the beast there is described in the exact same way in Revelation 13. And so more than likely that's the same beast. Well, in Revelation 17 it says, the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings. Revelation 17:12. Okay? So the 10 horns are 10 kings. Hold that in the back of your mind. Revelation 17, 9 and 10 says the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Okay? So the beast in Revelation 17 has the same number of heads and the same number of horns. Okay? And he says that the heads, the 7 heads, represent 7 mountains. The 10 horns represent 10 kings. By the way, pause for just a second. Do you remember what the horn symbolizes in the Old Testament? Anybody remember? Power, authority. That's what the horn represents. That's why he would say in Revelation 17, the 10 horns are the 10 kings. Okay? Now, this is where things get interesting. Does anybody know what number Emperor Domitian is?
Let me guess.
What number is he?
10?
He's number 10. He's number 10. That's exactly right. 7 heads. What? Go back to Revelation 17, 9 and 10. What do the 7 heads represent? What do the 7 heads represent? Mountains. Anybody ever heard of the 7 hills of Rome? You can Google it. Look it up. Rome is built on 7 hills. Do what? Which are 7 kings. Now, well, I'm saving that. Yes. I'm not going to get into Revelation 17 too much tonight. But he does say first, he says the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. But yes, I will, if any of that seems a little bit confusing, I will be covering that when we get to Revelation chapter 17, okay? But he says, the 10 horns represent 10 kings. Well, lo and behold, there's been 10 kings. The 7 heads represent 7 mountains. Well, Rome literally sits on 7 hills. It's called the 7 hills of Rome. You can Google it, and they still have the names of them still to this day. Very famously called the 7 hills of Rome, by the way. But then also, he says, on his heads were blasphemous names. So go back to Revelation 13 at the end of verse 1. It says, on his heads were blasphemous names. Well, lo and behold, in Daniel chapter 7, and you might want to go ahead and start flipping over to Daniel 7. Hold a finger in Revelation 13. But in Daniel 7, he describes a beast that with a mouth that utters great boasts. So blasphemous names and great boasts. The beast described here by John in Revelation chapter 13 is the same beast that Daniel describes in Daniel chapter 7. So flip over there to Daniel 7 with me. Like I said, keep a finger in Revelation 13. All right. Before we read Daniel chapter 7, What three animals does John describe the beast looking like? A lion, a bear, and a leopard. A lion, a bear, and a leopard. All right, keep that in the back of your mind. Look at Daniel chapter 7. And let's skip over to you, JR. Will you read verse 3 through 6 for me?
And 4 great beasts came up from the sea.
Came up from the where?
From the sea.
From the sea. Where did the beast come from in Revelation chapter 13?
From the sea.
From the sea. All right, keep reading.
Each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was giving to it. And suddenly another beast, a second like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and they said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which was on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this,
Okay. That's good. Thank you, sir. But in verses 3 through 6, you saw 3 beasts. What are the 3 beasts that you see in Daniel chapter 7 that came up out of the sea? A lion, a bear, and a leopard. Well, lo and behold, what was the beast that John saw in Revelation 13 described as? A lion, a bear, and a leopard. Now, here's where things get interesting. You see, Daniel was seeing a different vision. John did not see the same vision as Daniel saw. Let's be very clear about that. Daniel saw a vision that was something that was going to take place in the future. John is simply quoting from the book of Daniel to point to a truth, a secret truth that his readers would understand. Okay? Now, in Revelation, in chapter 13, John is describing just one beast, right? One beast. And he says of that one beast came up out of the sea, and the one beast looked like a lion, that one beast looked like a bear, and that same beast looked like a leopard, right? Well, in Daniel, it's 3 separate beasts, but in Daniel, there's a 4th beast. There's a 4th beast. Now, JR, read verse 7, okay?
sorry about that.
Well, you're good.
After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong, it had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there, in this horn, were eyes like the eyes of a man, and the mouth speaking pompous words.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So, in fact, verse 8, we're going to be getting into that when we read and study chapter 17. Because there in verse 8, it talks about a horn, another horn, a little one coming up among them. 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. If you want to go ahead and read ahead and kind of study ahead, you can look at Revelation 17 and how it relates to that verse right there. But we'll be covering that in the future. I want to focus in on Revelation or Daniel 7:7 right here, where it says that he saw a 4th beast. Okay? So the first 3 beasts matched identically to the one beast that John saw in Revelation. But what does this 4th beast have in common with that one beast? Did you catch it?
The 10 horns.
10 horns. It had 10 horns, just like the one that John saw in Revelation chapter 13. Okay? Now, I want you to notice something. Daniel interprets this for us. Okay? And Daniel's interpretation is going to help us with John's interpretation. By the way, how many times have we seen this so far in the book of Revelation? It's just over and over and over again. John mystically quotes something out of the Old Testament. We go to the Old Testament where he's quoting out of. And in the Old Testament quotation, it's in whatever book, Daniel, Ezekiel, Zephaniah, they say, this means this. You're like, oh, okay, well then you take that back to Revelation and you're like, oh, clear as day, looky there. Well, it's the same thing here. Look in Daniel chapter 7 and look down to verse 17 for me. Actually, look at verse 15. Verse 15, he says, as for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed within me, and the visions of my mind kept alarming me. I approached one of those who were standing by and began asking him the exact meaning of all of this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. Listen to what it says. These great beasts, which are 4 in number, are 4 kings who will arise from the earth. Okay? Now, if you keep reading down through there, what you'll find is of the 4 beasts, the 4th one is the beast that is around on the earth when the Most High is sent. If you look at verse 23, he says, the 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom. Okay? So, 3 beasts before the 4th one. The 3 beasts are 3 different kingdoms. The 4th one is a 4th kingdom on the earth, which will devour, which will be different from all the other kingdoms. So the 4th kingdom, the terrifying beast that wasn't even described like an animal, it just said it was terrifying. It was an awful sight to see. He said that one's different like the other ones. That one's going to devour the whole earth, tread it down, and crush it. Okay? Now, in verse 24 it says, as for the 10 horns out of this kingdom, out of what kingdom? The 4th kingdom. 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones, will subdue 3 kings. He will speak out against the Most High, wear down the saints of the highest one, and he will intend to make alterations in times and law. They will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time, which we covered in previous classes. But notice there that in verse 27 it says, then the sovereignty, the dominion, and the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the highest one. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and the dominions will serve, and all the dominions will serve and obey him. So what you notice there is that during the reign of the 4th kingdom, God's kingdom is established. God's kingdom is set in place. Well, you kind of got to get a picture of where Daniel is when he's writing this. What great kingdom is Daniel standing in when he writes these words? You may have to go back to verse 1.
Is it Babylon?
Do what?
Is it Babylon?
Babylon. Go back to verse 1. In the 1st year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. All right. How many beasts did Daniel see? 4 beasts. How many kingdoms was that going to come before the one great kingdom was going to come in the time of the 4th one?
3.
4. 4 great kingdoms. Well, Babylon was the first ruling empire. Then who came after Babylon?
Is it Assyria?
Do what?
Was Syria?
Persians. The Persians, yeah. Cyrus. It's kind of, yeah, Cyrus was the emperor of Persia whenever the Israelites were released again. It might be where you're getting that from. So Babylon was the first kingdom. They were the ruling empire of the world when this was written. Okay? Persia comes along and conquers Babylon. That's kingdom number 2. Greece comes along. The Greeks come along and conquer the world. Alexander the Great come and conquer the Persians. Then Rome comes along. And Rome stands out like a kingdom that had never been like that before. In fact, look at a map. You can Google it. I had maps, don't worry, but we don't have a PowerPoint. But you can look at the empires that existed before it. Babylon was pretty big. Persia was a little bit bigger. Alexander the Great conquered a lot, but then you look at Rome, and Rome is just this monstrous empire that they had conquered literally the known world at that time. No other nation came before it was like it. And that's what Daniel's talking about right here. And he says, in the time of that 4th kingdom, God's kingdom is going to be established. Well, what's the fourth kingdom? What is represented by the terrifying beast? Rome. Rome is represented by that terrifying beast. All right. So Daniel, all the way back in Daniel chapter 7, has a vision. He sees three beasts, a lion, a bear, and a leopard. And then he sees a really terrifying beast with 10 horns. And he said, that's going to be a kingdom like the world has never seen before. And here in that kingdom, God's kingdom, the church, is going to be established. All right. Take that back to Revelation chapter 13 right here. Go back to Revelation 13. And so think about chapter 12. Think about the dragon, okay? Tried to stop the child from being born. Tried to persecute the woman. Couldn't persecute the woman. Turned to persecute the other children. And as he turned to persecute the other children, he stood on the banks of the seashore and called a beast up out of the sea. And the beast looked like a lion, it looked like a bear, it looked like a leopard, and had 10 horns. What was the beast? Rome. Daniel, in Daniel chapter 7, spoke of a terrifying beast that was a fourth kingdom like the world had never seen. And John, right here in Revelation 13, describes that beast to a T. The dragon, in trying to persecute Christians, calls the sea beast Rome. He calls Rome and tries to use Rome as a tool to try to persecute and harm Christians. That is the identification of the sea beast. Now, this is where things get a little bit dicey, okay? Because does the sea beast represent Rome? Yes. However, the beast in other parts of the book of Revelation alludes to the emperor himself, Emperor Domitian. And you can kind of think about it like this. They're both synonymous with each other. And so when you think about the worship of the sea beast, you're talking about the worship of the emperor, but is that not Rome itself? The emperor representing Rome. And so the sea beast, again, represents Rome, but also, and like I said, this is where things get a little tricky. In here in a little bit, you're going to see that the sea beast was worshipped. Well, nobody actually worshipped Rome. What they did was they worshipped the emperor of Rome. But again, they're one and the same, okay? One and the same. Now, if you look there, look at verse 3 through, let's look at verses 3 through 7, okay? We're going to pick on Grady Gibson. Will you read Revelation 13, 3 through 7, please, sir?
One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but the mortal wounds were healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast, as they worshipped the dragon, for it had given him authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who can fight against it? And the beast was given a mouth uttering a haunting and blaspheming word, and it was allowed to exercise authority for the 42 months. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. As for it is allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them, and the authority was to conquer, and the authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and the nations, and all who dwell on earth will worship it, everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear.
Thank you, sir. All right, so according to verse 8 there, at the end of verse 8, it says, or at the beginning of verse 8 rather, it says, all who dwell on the earth will worship him. Okay, and again, go back to the fact that Roman citizens never worshipped Rome itself. What they did was they worshipped the emperor of Rome. And again, that's the whole context of the book of Revelation, is emperor worship was at its height, was at its most powerful. Because Emperor Domitian, who's the current ruling emperor when this book is written, was the first emperor to come along and say, I don't want to be worshipped after I'm dead. I want to be worshipped as a god now. And he cranked up emperor worship. And it's seen right here in this chapter. And you can already tell just a little bit. It says, more than once it says they worship the beast. It says it in verse 4, and it says it in verse 8 again, that they worship the beast. Okay? Now, I want you to also notice in verse 3, I'm just going to give you a little tidbit here. I don't know how true this is, but scholars believe that it says that one of his heads had been slain and his fatal wound was healed. They think that's Emperor Nero. Because the Emperor Nero had been slain, and after Emperor Nero was slain, Christian persecution kind of waned a little bit. During the times of Vespasian and not Tychicus, I can't remember the other emperor's name, but it's the one after Vespasian. They're the what? No, ma'am, not Constantine. No, ma'am, he was later. Close though. One of those Roman names. But during that time between Nero and Domitian, Christian persecution kind of waned a little bit. Well, then when Emperor Domitian came along, boy, he really cranked up Christian persecution. And again, hence the writing of the book of Revelation for that reason. It was meant to be a book to lift up and encourage people who were being killed for the cause of Christ. Now, that's more than likely who he's referring to there in verse 3. But again, now look down in verse 7 there, or in verse 6 rather. It says, he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God. Well, surely the emperor of Rome absolutely did that. To blaspheme his name and his tabernacle. Well, according to the last part of that verse, what is his tabernacle a reference to?
Temple.
Do what?
The temple.
Heaven.
Those who dwell in heaven. Those who dwell in heaven. Again, you got to understand, I love that portion of the text where it's pointing to a fellowship that we enjoy with God in heaven. And that tabernacle, by the way, is literally just means to dwell, that we will dwell with God. Well, that's what he's blaspheming against. Now look at verse 10 there, and look at the destiny or the future of what's going to happen to this sea beast. It says there in verse 10, if anyone is destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone kills with the sword he must be killed. Here is the perseverance and the faith of the saints. Why would the perseverance and the faith of the saints be tied together with the concept of if you lead people captive, you're going to go into captivity. If you kill people with a sword, you're going to be killed with a sword. Why would the perseverance and the faith of the saints be tied to that?
So they don't revile for reviling.
Do what?
So they don't revile for reviling.
Motivation to not do what the Romans do? Absolutely. It's my personal opinion that this verse right here, in context, and again, in the context it's speaking of, is it speaking of specifically about the sea beast. In context, it says of the sea beast, if anyone captive, or if anyone leaves somebody captive or destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone kills with a sword he must be killed. Emperor Domitian was killed with the sword in AD 96, not too long after this verse right here was written. He was so hated by his peers, he was so hated by the Senate and his own wife, who, by the way, he had exiled more than once, that she more than likely was the one who had him executed in his own house. And verse 10 kind of alludes to that just a little bit. Now, that's the sea beast. Does anybody have any questions over the identification of the sea beast or the work of the sea beast? Yes, Ms. Stephanie.
So in verse 10, would that be like letting the people know that he's going to be killed? Like prophesying, or just encouraging them not to do that?
And see, this is where interpretation comes into play. It's my opinion that that's what he is alluding to.
Okay.
But that interpretation is also absolutely true. Is that he is reminding them very much the same as 1 Peter chapter 2, where Christ died, leaving us an example to follow in his footsteps, who uttered no threats, and being reviled did not revile in return. And so, yes, it could possibly absolutely be a reference to that. But it could also be, in the context it's given of describing the sea beast, it could be a reference to his ultimate destination, which was going to be murdered by his own family. Okay? Possibly. Your salvation does not depend on your interpretation of Revelation 13:10. Thank goodness. All right, that's the sea beast. Now let's get into this second beast that we're going to see in the text here, and this is referred to as the land beast, a beast that comes up out of the earth in verses 11 through 18. All right, John Boutron, will you read verse 11 for me, please, sir?
And I behold another beast coming up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, and spoke to the dragon.
Okay, so as compared to the first beast, okay, the sea beast, how many horns did he have?
2.
Do what? Well, no, the sea beast, the first one.
10.
10. Right, he had 10 horns. How many horns does this one have? 2 horns. And they're small horns, right? These are described as horns like a lamb, okay? And so that kind of gives the idea of a little bit less authority. And in fact, if you look at verse 12 there, John, why don't you go ahead and read verse 12 too for me, please, sir?
And he exercised all power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound has healed.
Okay, so hone in on, especially verse 12, at the beginning of that verse, it says, he exercises all authority of the first beast in his presence, okay? So what would you say the chain of authority would be from the dragon to the sea beast to the earth beast? Would you say that that was a stepping down in authority? Mm-hmm. Because you see, the dragon gave the sea beast authority, did he not? Well, it appears that in verse 12 right here that the sea beast would give this land beast authority. That's what it says in verse 12. It says, he exercises all the authority of the first beast. Well, the first beast is the sea beast, okay? And again, who is the sea beast? Rome. Emperor Domitian, one and the same. But notice, according to verse 12 there, what is it that this land beast does when he exercises authority? About halfway through down in that verse, what does it say?
Causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast.
Okay, so according to verse 12, does the land beast actually get worshipped?
No.
Okay, who are they worshiping? Do what?
The first beast.
The first beast, the sea beast. But who is it that's forcing the worship of the sea beast?
Satan.
Do what?
Satan.
Not Satan, but according to verse 12 there, who's the
land beast.
The land beast. The land beast is forcing worship of the sea beast. Do you see it? In Rome, when Emperor Domitian decided that he was going to really ramp up emperor worship, when Emperor Domitian decided that he didn't want to wait until he died, until he got worshipped, he's like, I want to be worshipped as a god right now. When he did that, he put 2, what's the word I'm looking for? Groups or bodies of people together, okay? One of them is called the Councilia. The other one is called the Praefectus Urbi, okay? The Praefectus Urbi are the people that would be like Adolf Hitler's brown shirts. They would be the people who would be going around and enforcing the things that the emperor himself wanted to enforce. Well, Emperor Domitian put in place these groups of people called the Praefectus Urbi, and their sole job was to go from village to village and make sure that people worship the emperor. You see, it wasn't just the Roman soldiers who would come knocking in your town if you were a Roman citizen and ask you if you were worshiping the emperor. It was this group of people right here, the Praefectus Urbi.
Secret Service.
Basically. And they had the power to, if you said, no, I don't worship the emperor, they might give you a chance. Some of them might. But most of the time, they're just going to drag you out of your home. And they're going to take you all the way back to Rome, where you're probably going to be tossed into a gladiator ring. Especially if we look at later on in the history of Rome. The Praefectus Urbi were some bad dudes. They were the ones who were responsible for the death of Christians. They were the ones who were responsible for Christians losing their livelihoods, losing their businesses that we're going to see here in just a little bit later on in the passage. They're responsible for that. They were put in place by Emperor Domitian to enforce emperor worship. That's what they did. Okay? And so when you see the land beast here, look at verse 12. The land beast is not operating on his own authority. Whose authority is he operating off of? The first beast, the sea beast, Rome, Emperor Domitian. And what is he doing? The land beast, what's he doing?
Going around making everybody worship.
He's going around making everybody worship the sea beast. He's going around making everybody worship the emperor. The land beast is a reference to Praefectus Urbi. Now, if you keep reading there, look at verse 14. In verse 14, it says, he deceives those who dwell on the earth. Again, we're still talking about the land beast, okay? He deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given to him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. The Councilia was a group of people who were put in charge by the emperor himself to make images of the emperor to be worshipped. And so they would go around and they would put people in charge of making little gold or silver or wooden or bronze or whatever it may be, trinkets, images that would be sold and brought in each and every single person's house where you had the opportunity to worship the emperor. See, it was the Councilia that did that. And so the land beast, more than likely, is a reference to the Councilia and the Praefectus Urbi. Notice also verse 15 there. Verse 15 there, it says, there was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast might even speak and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. That's what the Praefectus Urbi did. That was their sole job, their sole purpose was to go from village to village and look for people who didn't worship the emperor and drag them out of their homes. Verse 16, he causes all, the small and the great and the rich and the poor and the free men and the slaves to be given a mark on their right hand and on their forehead. And he provides that no one should be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. All right. What the Praefectus Urbi would also do is they showed up in your town and they went to your door and said, do you worship the emperor? And you said, no, I'm a Christian. You know what they did?
Drug you out.
Do what?
They drug you out.
Well, other than drag you out. According to verse 17 there, it says that they did not allow you to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark. If you were a Christian, there was a law that was passed by the emperor himself that made it illegal. Domitian was the one who passed it. They still have the writings of it and everything. Emperor Domitian passed a law that said it was illegal to do business if you were a Christian. And what does verse 17 say? It says that the land beast is going around exercising the authority that whoever does not have the mark is not allowed to buy or sell.
And the mark is symbolic. If you look at it, it's symbolic.
The mark is symbolic, absolutely. Well, look at chapter 14. So we're talking about the mark of the beast, right? And this is where the mark of the beast gets to be so mystified, right? Well, what are we talking about? What's the mark of the beast? Well, it's the sign that you worship the emperor. I'm a good Roman citizen in good standing with the emperor of Rome because I worship the emperor. Here's my mark that I can do business and that I don't get drug out of my home. But look at Revelation 14, verse 1. I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his name and the name of his Father written on their foreheads. Do you see the contrast between the mark of the beast and the mark of God? That's what he's talking about. Worshippers of God, worshippers of emperor. Worshippers, servants of God that have the mark of God, worshippers and servants of emperor who have the mark of the emperor. Because who's the sea beast? We've established that from Daniel chapter 7. It's Rome. It's the emperor. That's the sea beast. That's the one that the land beast, the Praefectus Urbi, the thugs from the emperor himself, were going around town to town making people worship him. And they had a piece of paper that says if you were a Christian, it was illegal for you to buy or sell. And so they would go around and they would look for people who didn't worship the emperor and say, it's illegal for you to have this business. This is now property of the emperor of Rome. And they take that business from them. If they didn't have what? You said it just a second ago. The mark. The mark. The mark of the beast. Verse 18, here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast. Who's the beast?
Rome.
Rome, the emperor. For the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. There are three Trinity. This is really interesting. There is a trinity of trinities in the book of Revelation. Have you ever noticed that? There's a trinity of trinities. There's 3 times in the book of Revelation that a trinity of thought is used. The first time that it's found is in Revelation 4:8. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God the Almighty, who was, who is, and who is to come. Second time it's found is in Revelation 8:13. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound. And the third and final time that it's found is right here, that the number of the man, the number of the beast, is 666. And so you see, it's not some mystified number of Satan. It's the number. It's the mark of somebody who worships the emperor, who worships the beast. That's why it's called the mark of the beast. Because the sea beast is emperor, according to Daniel, or emperor of Rome, according to Daniel chapter 7. And those who worship him receive a mark on their heads, mark on their foreheads, 666. And what does the number 6 represent?
Incomplete.
Anybody remember?
Incomplete.
Incomplete. Incomplete or imperfect. And so it's a trinity of incompleteness. Incomplete, incomplete, incomplete. And Trinity, what is 3? What does 3 represent? Totality. The totality of something. That's why holy, holy, holy is Lord. Because God is all completely, totally holy. And so 666 is used of those who would dare even worship this emperor over here, because you are completely and totally incomplete and imperfect. That's what the mark of the beast is. Has nothing to do with Satan. Again, go back to Revelation 12. The dragon was the one who gave his authority to the sea beast. Well, the sea beast was the one who gave his authority to the land beast, who goes around and makes people worship the emperor, and whoever does it, or whoever does, has the mark that allows them to be able to buy and sell and operate their business in Rome. It's as simple as that. All right. And that concludes my class. I'm kind of ending on a weird note there. But does anybody have any questions or comments as it relates to the number of the beast, the sea beast, or the identification of the sea beast, or the identification of the land beast? Any comments or questions? Nothing at all?
It was pretty...
Man.
I know you don't want to be here all night.
I don't want to be here all night. Yes, Mike.
I kind of do.
Yeah.
So, I know people in here have heard the coronavirus shot being called the mark of the beast, right? But why is that?
Well, I mean, you could if it's a tongue-in-cheek reference to it. Now, I don't think the coronavirus. You're talking about the coronavirus vaccine.
The vaccine. There you go. That's
Okay. Well, if it was used tongue-in-cheek, so let's say that because remember they were talking about you having a basically like a coronavirus vaccine passport. Remember that? Whereas like if you got your vaccine, then you could have a piece of paper. It was like they even went so far as to say they were going to think about not giving you your driver's license. Yeah, it couldn't fly, right? They're talking about revoking your driver's license unless you had the COVID vaccine. Like they were talking about all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, let's say they did that, and unless you had the COVID vaccine piece of paper that allowed you to basically go out into public, well, then you could like tongue-in-cheek say that was like the mark of the beast. It's not. That nothing has to do with prophetic prophecy in Scripture necessarily, but it's just the concept of unless you do this thing, that you are now approved to move freely, and that thing that they want you to do, or they're revoking freedoms of some kind. You know what I mean? Unless you do this thing, like I said, unless they use it tongue in cheek, then it wouldn't apply. But no, prophetically, no, it wouldn't be pointing to that. So the number of the beast is speaking about a specific point in time, about a specific thing that was happening, right? So the specific thing that was happening in time was, if you didn't worship the emperor, your life was ruined. I mean, they were literally burning people at stakes. Emperor Nero, who I mentioned just a second ago, he would, and I've mentioned this in class before, y'all heard this before, he would have these disgusting parties in which, in order to keep them lit and going through the night, he would burn Christians at stakes for lights, basically. And in fact, he would have chariots driving through his garden as he just surveyed the Christians that are burning in his garden, almost like he was sightseeing his own garden. Christians were being drugged in the gladiator ring and eaten alive by wild animals. Their businesses were being taken from them. Livelihoods were being taken from them. So you can imagine the pressure for when the Praefectus Urbi, who's described as the land beast, comes knocking on your door and they say, do you worship the emperor? Could you imagine the pressure to say, yeah, I do. And just so you can close the door and go away and not really mean it? Could you imagine that pressure? But what does God want you to say?
He wants you to stand up, get the
He wants you to look at him and say,
Get off my
I'll
porch.
worship Jesus the Christ. Do what?
Get off my porch.
Get off my porch. Thank you,
And,
Steph.
it kind of looks like John is.
Oh, go ahead.
To me, it kind of looks like John is telling them what's happening to him
Mm-hmm.
with the hope of what's to come.
Yes, thank you, JR. Thank you, JR. Farrell, I'm getting to you. Don't worry, I haven't forgot about you. Yes, absolutely. Really, the whole point of chapter 13 is John is describing something that's going on right in front of their eyes.
Right.
He's not telling them anything that's about to happen. He's describing things that are happening.
Right.
That Rome is demanding worship. And there's this group of people out there forcing this worship. And if you don't worship the emperor, then you have this mark on you. Or if you do worship the emperor, you have this mark on you that allows you to buy and sell. Yes, Farrell.
Well, I'm cheating a little bit.
Yeah, cheat away.
But if you were a Christian and living in that time and they knocked on your door and you accepted it, you received the mark of the beast. God knew exactly you were turning away from him. And that's what John's writing to these Christians, saying, look, if you accept this right now, you're the wrath of God is going to be on you. Who wrath would you rather have, the Romans or God's wrath?
That's right.
And that's exactly what he's telling us.
That's right.
It's not a literal mark, but God knows who you are, and they know who you are.
It's a
not
mark
on the head.
It's a mark that God can see.
Absolutely.
It's a mark that God can see. Yeah, it's nothing mystical. It's nothing literal about that. It's nothing that couldn't be repented of. Which, by the way, just a little tidbit of historical facts. After the persecution of Christians ended, there was an influx. And when I say influx, I mean a bunch of Christians that came back to the church and basically said, no, we were just kidding. We never meant it the whole time. We were just trying to do it to save our own skin. And the elders of the churches at that time didn't know what to do. They didn't know if they should make those people publicly repent or accept them back. And it was kind of like a big mess in the church. That right after persecution ended, there was this huge influx of Christians who came back because, again, they were scared of exactly what's being described right here in chapter 13.
It's described as the greatest apostasy of the church during that period of
Yes.
time.
Yes.
That's what it was called. Whenever they were forbidding men to marry and forbidding them to eat meat, that was when it all in the apostasy.
1 Timothy
Paul
chapter
writes
4.
about it in Timothy.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right.
The falling away, and there's a lot of them that fell away. I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about, because they couldn't take the heat from Rome, and they didn't understand the heat from God.
Yeah. Well, that's right, and that's why, and I hate chapter divisions, because chapter 14 is a terrible chapter division. Because chapter 14 and verse 1, what you have there is the contrast between the mark of God and the mark of the beast. The mark on the forehead of the worshiper of the Father, and the mark on the forehead of the worshiper of the beast, which is the worship of the emperor. So, anyway, yeah, nothing mystical about that at all. And again, it's not about Satan. And that's what the most common misconception of the mark of the beast, 666, is that's the mark of who? The mark of the devil, right? That's what a lot of people think. It has nothing to do with the devil. It has nothing to do with the devil. Well, I say nothing. The devil was using Rome to try to bring about his will.